Excellent. Well, I could not be more excited to be here with the both of you. I think this is a worlds collide moment for me as I left the volleyball world many years ago and went into education because we can transform the world when we're focused on kids. And certainly my path was through coaching, but eventually into teaching and being here at Thrively to really elevate our conversations around strengths and assets. We know from an athletic perspective that that's a really big thing. So really excited to have you all here. And we have partners with Thrively. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, but Cassidy and Grant have joined us from Path, and they are on a whole new endeavor, which is near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to turn it over to them. With some of you coming in, please tell us where you're from. Throw in the chat a little hi, and we'll be glad to welcome you. I'm going to turn it over to Cass and Grant right now.
Thank you. We're really excited to be here. I'm the founder of an organization called Path. It's a nonprofit organization. We're going to be talking about it today and our partnership with Thrively, where you can find a lot of our content. This is my dad, Grant Lixman, who's an expert in education, author, consultant, has written multiple books. And do you want to say anything else about that?
Well, yeah, in this context, I'm Cassidy's dad, but I've been happy to help her launch this really incredible not-for-profit that certainly has a very strong educational component. I think all the educators that are on this and see the recording will recognize immediately that we're tapping into some new modalities of trying to teach some of the human-centered skills that we all believe are so important. So I'm kind of in the background on this project as an educational advisor, but really the steam and the engine here is Cassidy's, and so I'll leave it to her to take you all through it.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. If there's any questions while I talk, feel free to put them in the chat, and Jeanette can let me know. I'm going to go through a quick presentation. So quick kind of bio on myself. I grew up largely in a volleyball gym in Southern California, played all of my childhood, and then went on to play at Stanford, where I also got a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's in history. Then I went on to play for the US national team for 5 years and professionally in leagues overseas. Went back to Stanford for a year to coach, and we won a national championship, and I'm still involved in the sport. I'm the director of volleyball for the professional league in the US, Athletes Unlimited. And so this project really, some of it is born from sports, but it's not about sports. I think it's just about taking some of those lessons that a lot of us believe are part of the sports experience, and using that lens to try to teach kids some of the skills that we think are going to make them more successful students, more successful workers in their future jobs, and then more successful kind of human beings as they go about their lives.
And Cass, we have a hand up if you wouldn't mind pausing for a moment. I don't know. I'm going to allow talking permitted, and if M. Wilson would like to share what you would like to say. I saw your hand up. If you did it by yourself.
Hello, I'm Mike Wilson. I'm the District Director of Athletics at Reynolds School District in Oregon.
Awesome.
So I'm glad to be here. I'm very interested in this subject.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for supporting our student athletes.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. So this I think mission will resonate with you. So we'll go over kind of what Path is and what our content includes, but this is really our mission to increase empathy, equity, empowerment in this rising generation. I think you all deal with kids every day, and you've seen how some of them struggle in learning these skills, or how we think we're teaching these skills in certain environments like sports, but also the classroom, but don't always have a lot of intention around. And so we've built this content to make it as easy as possible for educators, teachers, coaches, advisors, to make sure that they're hitting on, sort of the life skills and the human skills, as well as everything else that you have to teach every day. So one of
the screen you're on has a big, and it looks like maybe it's because you're, yeah, there you go. Now we can see. Perfect. Thank you so much.
So one of kind of the keys of our content is that we use these ambassadors who come from the elite world of sports. So they are professional or Olympic or collegiate coaches and athletes who have had a lot of success in that area. And this was partly born out of, my experiences in, going back and talking to kids and talking to teams and seeing how kids just listen a little bit differently when you drop sort of the brand names of, Team USA or the NFL or the NBA. These are the people that kids are already kind of watching every day on their phones, on their TikTok and their Instagram highlights. And so they have, a different kind of cultural resonance that they may say the exact same thing that you're saying in your classroom, but when it comes from Steve Kerr or Kelsey Plum or Apollo Ono, it just, kids hear it a little bit differently. And so we've put together, a really diverse set of these people because each kid's going to resonate with somebody different. And they can speak authentically to their own experiences. So, I'm never going to be able to talk about what it's like to be, Black and Korean growing up in a single mother household, but Hines Ward can talk about that. And he's an NFL player who's won a Super Bowl, so that helps too. So we've kind of curated this group of people to speak on a variety of issues, again, kind of around those key buckets of empathy, equity, and empowerment, men, women, kind of across the spectrum. So why is this effective? So what we make is short form video content. All of our videos are 2 to 3 minutes usually. And we know that this is how people learn. You don't have a lot of time. If you're a teacher, a coach, an administrator, you know how little time we have to spend kind of directly on these subjects. And so if we make something that's an hour long or a 4-hour seminar, that's excellent. And whether or not you're going to use it on a frequent basis, it seems a little bit unlikely. And so we've tried to make it as short as possible so that you can do it frequently. And so we know this is how people learn, by short, frequent bursts, as opposed to kind of sitting down one time and learning it. And so that's why we've made it this kind of 10-minute segment, trying to put it into playlists and so that you can use it frequently, week after week. And then being engaging. And so as I was, talking about our ambassadors, we're really trying to meet the kids where they are. And so that's in the people that we use. It's in the form of content that we use. We know that attention spans are not super long. So we want to put it in kind of the context that is already appealing to them. Like, we can all say that we'd love that if our kids stayed off their phones or stopped, watching videos, but if that's what they're going to do, then we can use that medium, in more positive ways. So we've really tried to design the content to be easy for the teacher and engaging for the students, and kind of meet in that happy middle. And then we want it to be experiential. So you're not just taking in this content, watching a video and then going about your day, but we really try to include within our content action items and discussion items afterwards. So after you take in this information from whoever our ambassador is who's speaking on the featured kind of lesson, then we have questions there for you that you can go over as a class, as a small group, individually, to talk about what you learned, what you heard, and then how to actually put it into action. And that can be in the classroom, when you go home, in your sports practice, whatever space you're in that day. So in terms of our users, we really look at sort of middle school and high school primarily, maybe down to about 4th and 5th grade as our primary kind of target audiences in terms of the kids. But really going up through college and even to adults. I mean, as adults, I watch this content, and the people that I know watch this content, and the same lessons are applicable whether you're 14 years old or 45. And so even if it's just within your faculty or your coaches, you can use this as an educational resource for kind of any age above about 8 or 9. I think below that, they might not totally understand these lessons. We've had input from students that we've worked with, educators and university advisors, And this content's already in use on the Thrively platform and in other spaces across private and public schools and collegiate programs. And so while the kids are really the ones that we're targeting with this right now, the coaches and the teachers and the advisors are sort of the vessels to get it to them. I think any kid could use the content on their own, but obviously being in a group setting helps, get some accountability and helps them kind of talk to their peers about what they're hearing and how they're putting it into action. So here's how it works. Like I said, 2 to 3 minute video that you can watch on, it's a YouTube video, so you can watch on it kind of any of your electronics. We give discussion questions that can be a 2-minute discussion, it can be a 10-minute discussion, and then action steps. So not just right this moment, but as you go about your day, as you go about your week, what are a couple ways that you can practice this skill that we've just talked about, or the lesson we've just talked about in your own life. And then, like we said earlier, we want to try to make that a repetitive thing so that you're coming back the next week and doing it again, or 2 weeks later on some kind of regular basis, so that you're really getting to these lessons. And I think, from the educators that I've spoken to, one of the important things is they talk about, not being able to, or not knowing how to dive, really deeply into these concepts, into SEL skills or into life skills concepts. And I think sometimes we get caught up in that, as opposed to understanding that sometimes we just need little reminders. We don't necessarily need to, solve everything or develop empathy within kind of one moment or one class. We just need little reminders on a frequent basis to make sure we're checking our actions and seeing that they reflect who we want to be as people. So we're going to go over what this actually looks like, and we're going to use Thrively to do it because it's a great kind of platform to use in that space. So I'm going to go over there so you can see it. So these are the playlists we have up in Thrively right now. Dealing with adversity, confidence, self-empowerment. Each of these has 4 videos attached to it, and teamwork and collaboration. We're going to go into the teamwork and collaboration playlist. And you can see kind of the skills that we're working on up here. We have a teacher guide that our teachers can use that has listed kind of all of the lessons and the summaries of those. And like I said, just 3 to 4 minutes online, reflection, discussion, and taking action. So that's the entire teacher guide there. And so what it looks like on any given video, we're going to watch my friend Neko Agumake. So each one starts with the video up here. That's the first exercise. And we're going to watch Neko really quick. Can everyone hear that? I just want to check. You good?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay, perfect.
I can definitely use my example of being Nigerian American. With that, my experience is quite unique. And I think it's a perfect example of understanding that I have, even outside of just my Black experience as a woman, I have a cultural experience as well. And so that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. There are Nigerians that feel that I'm not Nigerian enough, and there are Americans that might feel that I'm not American enough. And what I can say most about all of that is no one is any one thing. And it's important to realize that, especially as you evolve and as you figure out exactly where you fit into this world, and just how important what your contribution can be. You don't need to narrow it down to just one thing, but you most certainly can use the things that make you you to celebrate yourself, and for others to also learn more about your experience. And then with that too, I think it's important for young individuals and young aspirers to understand that just like how you have a story, other people have a story as well. And in the same way, you want others to hear your story, you too have to listen. And I think the world that we live in now too is because certain voices were not heard, certain voices were muted. And the first way to really fix that is to understand that there are experiences outside of yours. And if you raise that voice who has the least space, then it causes everyone's situation to get better. When it comes to playing sports at a young age, it builds a character in people as citizens in society that nurtures that environment that we wish to see everywhere, which is teamwork. What contributes to how I play on the court has a lot to do with the aspect of teamwork. I love playing with people. I love making myself better so that other people can also be better. I love being great so other people can be great. And I think that's that kind of ties into understanding that everybody has a role, everybody has a story. And once that is out there, and once that space is made for each person to kind of provide their story and contribute their part, then the team can work that much better.
So that is Nneka Ogwumike. She's in the WNBA right now. Was an all-star last year. Is the head of the WNBA's Players Association. She's a fantastic human. If you could put in the chat, or if you want to kind of raise your hand to talk, you can. Kind of anything that, while I'm talking, anything that sort of resonated with you from that video. I think you can see from that while she's talking about, sports and teamwork, these lessons obviously can be applied in a lot of different ways. And teams obviously come in a lot of different forms. And so, whether or not the kids that you're working with are basketball players or athletes, they can still kind of understand this message that's coming through. And we'll go over these things to think about and ways to practice are right here within the platform, which is super helpful for Thrively. But if there's anyone who kind of resonates, especially with anything in that video, go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand.
And I did give everybody access to being able to unmute, and we'd love to hear your voices since we're a smaller group. So you can do that as well.
Anybody have anything before we go on? Okay, we'll take a look at the questions and maybe you'll have thoughts after that. So you would watch that video, or your students would watch that video, and then the first thing just below it is a couple of those, a couple questions. So for each student, they can look at, okay, if no one is just one thing, as Nneka was talking about, what are some of the things that make up your story? Or what are some of the ways you can better listen or help raise someone else's voice? So an opportunity to take some of the key messages that Nneka just spoke to in that video and reflect on them in the notes. And then we go down to the sort of what are your couple takeaways to make sure that they're noting what they heard without kind of our prompting. And we go to ways to practice. And so all of our videos follow this format afterwards, reflection and then ways to practice. And so in this one, we talk about pairing up with a friend and speaking about it, or finding an opportunity this week to listen and better understand someone else and raise their voice. And what's great about the Thrively platform that we really love is that your students can enter reflections here or any other artifacts, so their audio or their video or pictures, so that they can document maybe what they did that week to listen, or what they talked about with their friend. And so I think that's super helpful for you to be able to see that they actually went and put it into action. And like I said, this is really kind of sport adjacent, but we've had people use our content in advisory classes, in English classes, and history. One of my favorite uses was an English teacher at Punahou School in Hawaii, and she was showing a video, I think it might be in this same playlist, she was showing a video about kind of stereotypes, and then had her kids writing poems about how other people saw them, And that's not an application that I would have expected when I was first, creating Path and creating this content. But, what a great way to kind of introduce the concept to them, or to use this as just a prompt to then give the kids the space to, be creative and speak to what their story is and how they resonate with whatever message you just heard. So if you're in a humanities class or an advisory, you can do that. And then obviously if you're a coach, it's easy to translate directly to your practices. So I think that's, super helpful with Thrively. Jeanette, if there's anything else that you want to mention about the platform itself, you can go for it.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, just the videos are such great connections for kids, and I think, it's almost like they're talking to the students, which is so powerful. And for those of you who have used Thrively before, you do know that the self-reflection piece is really an important piece. So you'll see here on this screen, you've got a number of different ways. You've got the text reflection, or you could have students open up the video. There's a little video thing. You could have them turn and talk to a neighbor. What did I just learn? Maybe turn it into a dialogue of some sort. I've actually had students where there's 3 of them sitting around and you capture some of their understanding behind, what the athletes are saying and things that they're using. But I think that extension piece, as you mentioned, Cass, is really important. Like, how am I going to use what I've just learned? So again, really connecting whole group. And so these journal reflections, you as a practitioner, you as the coach or the facilitator, the teacher, can go in and push their thinking with your feedback. And so really tapping into getting kids to think about how they're taking some of these disciplines and these attributes that they're sharing and bring them into the academic classroom is so important. So thank you for creating these. They're brilliant.
Yeah, Jeanette, as we as educators are all talking about the desire to make classrooms more student-centric and elevate student voice and choice, we've actually had some students who said their response after watching some of the videos, was, that's fabulous. Now we want to say what we think about that, and we want to make our own little video. By the way, I want to emphasize that all the videos on these playlists are based on interviews that Cass had one-on-one with these influencers. This isn't stock content that she pulled in from somewhere else. And the kids recognize that, and they're like, wow, okay, now we heard what Steve Kerr or Neko Gumake or somebody like that has to say about it. Now we want to make our own video, have our own little dialogue, and they immediately jump to that. And within the Thrively platform, that's so easy for them to do and create that content. And that's where you're going to see the real impact of kids owning this rather than just being receptacles of something somebody told them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've also had somebody talked about going and interviewing the adults in their community. So if I'm interviewing NECA, then having a kid go and interview for Punahou, it was one of the elders in the community, or somebody who works at the school or their grandparent, to see what they might say on these same issues. So I just want to ask really quick, and when we can throw out some other ideas as well, or things that we've heard in terms of how people are applying it. But the first question is, as you're listening to this, as you're seeing the content, potentially for the first time, what comes top of mind? How might you or your colleagues, your teachers, your coaches use these resources in a way that would work in your setting? And again, you're able to come off mute if you want. If you're shy, you can put it in the chat. Opening it up.
Typing the question in the chat for those of you that want to.
Come on, people, don't be shy. There we go.
We have good wait time.
Holiday celebrations, interesting, yeah. Cultural familiar, be able to capture those. And I'll speak in just a moment to how athletic teams can utilize this. So we wait just a minute longer for people to submit things in the chat. Yeah, the other question you can answer is what are ideas for student activities? So like we said, this can be applied, within the sports context, within the classroom context. You know, the skill you work on might be at home or, you know, in the school cafeteria. Any other ideas? So I'll speak to how athletic teams can utilize this while anybody else is entering answers. Yeah, I think it's obviously super relevant for those teams. And so you can imagine, you know, the huddle at the beginning or the end of practice, like you said, it only takes 10 minutes. So if you can take 10 minutes while people are putting their shoes on or at the end of practice to quickly watch, or maybe they've already watched at home and you're just having a discussion, and then picking, okay, how am I going to use this in practice? So, you know, for NECA's video, it's, you know, how am I going to make sure that I'm, you know, raising the voice of maybe somebody who's quieter or less recognized. We have content in our other playlists around things like dealing with adversity. So it might be, you know, this week I'm going to work on, you know, reacting differently when things don't go my way. But I think, you know, team settings it translates really well because this is all in kind of the language of sports. So if your coaches can take 10 minutes, like I said, to just go over it once a week, once every 2 weeks on some kind of schedule, or devote, you know, part of preseason to it, or part of bus rides or, you know, trips. The goal is not to take a ton of time or to put a huge burden on your coaches. It's just to do it regularly so that they're going over some of these skills with a little bit of intention.
And, you know, Cass, another example just came up a couple of days ago when I was talking to a principal at a school back east, where we have so many classrooms now where we're trying to get kids to collaborate better and work on teams, on projects, project-based learning kind of work. And yet we don't really spend a ton of time on teaching kids how to perform well as teams. And every one of the videos that you've put together, I think, speaks to something that's just as applicable to a collaborative team might be the robotics team, it might be in a STEM class, it might be on an English project or a project in any other class, to get kids to just talk about what does it mean to be a good, in the case of NECA, to be a good teammate. But all the videos speak to something about that students are going to learn something about how to collaborate. Maybe it's in their theater group or their art group that they're doing on a big art project. So I think we're finding that people are seeing application. Really, the sport is just the metaphor, and the coaches and athletes are the deliverers of the message because they're famous, because more people know Steve Kerr than know you and me. But it's so widely applicable as we're getting kids to try to work better in teams in classrooms.
Mm-hmm. One of the other uses that I've really liked that people have brought up, especially those who work in, you know, maybe a school that has K-6 or K-12, is older kids teaching younger kids. So older kids, you know, watching, maybe your 8th graders are watching the content and answering the questions, and then they're sometimes, you know, they're paired up with a younger kid or younger team. Maybe it's your 8th grade team or your 6th grade team. Then they're helping teach the younger kids, you know, the same concepts. And I think we know that having to teach something is one of the best ways to learn it, having to articulate it yourself. And so if you imagine using, you know, NECA's video with some of your varsity team, and they're helping the freshman team learn, I think that's a great way to apply it. Cool, your student leader interns using it. That's awesome.
Mm.
Yeah, I think leadership groups on campus we've heard about too, captains councils, you know, the kids who are really leading your student body are great spaces to introduce these subjects too. Any questions before we only have a couple minutes left, but if there's any questions or other comments you want to put in.
Yeah, Grant, you bring up something that my last year of teaching, I put on the board literally every day. I have a learning target that said self-directed while working in teams. Yeah. Because it was the number one thing as a STEM coordinator that I saw in my classrooms. And maybe some of you who are listening, when you do PBLs, you're pushing learning and the inquiry and all of that onto them, and that's a learned skill. That's something that you have to practice. And I remember the first couple of weeks, it was like controlled chaos in the classroom. So we intentionally worked on self-directed. What does that mean? How do I act? How do I act if I can't be self-directed? And then I'm in a team and I'm not getting along with someone, or maybe they're working a little differently than me. So, I mean, I wish I would have had this back then, because I definitely would have had them go through the entire sequence as they're starting to think about what role do they play on a team, whether it's building a
your teacher should
prosthetic
note
or.
that you should note that, we've curated all those skills in the playlist, so they can look and say, okay, what did this particular playlist, this particular video highlight that maybe the kids are struggling with, or that I want to address with today. And again, it doesn't take up so much time that you're spending, half the project allotment of 3 weeks just getting that. These are these little bits that the kids can take as they start each project, and that way they're gonna train it a lot better.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to all of you for being here today. I truly appreciate just, you joining us live. Please tell your friends. We will have the webinar recorded and share it out. But certainly we're partnered up with PATH, so we would love to talk to you about how to get the strength assessment into your schools, as well as the playlists that have been created here, so that your students can benefit from hearing from some of the great athletes out there, and certainly diving into some of the other things. So please reach out. Cassidy's put her email in there. We also put a form to let us know how we're doing. And if you connect us to one of your administrators, we're happy to bring you some deep discounts for Thrively and for PATH. So thank you for being here today, and spread the word, because you both are doing great work and great things for humanity. So keep it up, and thank you so much. Any other questions at all before we say have a great evening? Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Check out PATH at pathsports.org, and certainly reach out to myself at Jeanette@Thrively.com, or just visit our Thrively, and you guys can get the free strength assessment. So keep doing what you guys are doing. We need great educators and coaches like all of you. And thank you for being here tonight. And we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
for coming.
Bye-bye.